When I read my mother-in-law's will, my hands went cold. It wasn't the money. It wasn't even the estate she left behind, the old white house with its creaky wooden floors and whispering hallways. It was the name written in bold ink, to my granddaughter, Emily. Not to her son, my husband. Not to me, the woman who had cared for her when she fell sick. Just, to Emily. I remember staring at the paper, the lawyer's voice fading into static. My husband, Daniel, sat next to me, jaw clenched, eyes down. My daughter, only 16, looked confused, her face pale and still. And I felt something strange twist inside me. It wasn't just shock. It was betrayal, and something uglier underneath, jealousy. I didn't even know she had a will. I didn't even know my daughter had been part of her plans all along. Before all this, my relationship with my mother-in-law, Margaret, had always been complicated. That's the polite word for it. She was the kind of woman who could cut you down with a single glance, perfectly groomed, always wearing those pearl earrings and a faint smile that never quite reached her eyes. When I first met her, I thought she was just a little formal, a little distant. But after I married Daniel, I realized she was something else entirely. She loved Daniel, adored him. But she saw me as the woman who'd stolen him from her control. She would visit our home unannounced, inspecting things like a teacher grading homework. "You've rearranged the living room again," she'd say, her tone neutral but her eyes sharp. Daniel always preferred the couch by the window. I used to bite my tongue, smile, and nod. For Daniel's sake. He was gentle, soft-spoken, a man who hated conflict so much he'd rather agree to anything than start a fight. But with time, it became obvious, Margaret didn't just disapprove of me. She didn't trust me. Still, I tried. God knows I tried. Every Sunday, I cooked her favorite roast chicken. I called her when she fell ill. I sent her flowers on her birthday. But her warmth never came. Then Emily was born, our daughter. And everything changed. From the moment Margaret held that baby in her arms, her entire demeanor softened. She smiled, really smiled, for the first time in years. "She looks just like Daniel," she'd whispered, her voice trembling. "Those eyes, they're our family's eyes." From then on, she couldn't get enough of Emily. Expensive gifts arrived every birthday, gold bracelets, designer dresses, toys we could never afford. When Emily turned 10, Margaret started taking her on weekend trips, museums, tea parties, even short holidays to the coast. At first, I was grateful. I thought, maybe this is her way of making amends. But as years passed, the line between love and obsession blurred. Whenever I'd pick Emily up after a visit, Margaret would say things like, "She's growing up so fast, I hope she remembers which family she belongs to," with that pointed smile that made my stomach tighten. One afternoon, I overheard her telling Emily, "Don't worry, sweetheart, Grandma will always take care of you." Always. I brushed it off then, told myself she just adored her granddaughter. But now, I wonder if it was more than affection. Maybe it was a plan. A secret she had already set in motion. Our lives carried on like that, tense but civil. I worked part-time at the library, Daniel ran his father's small accounting firm, and Emily, bright and curious, grew into a young woman who somehow managed to stay untouched by all the tension around her. She loved both of us, me and her grandmother, with an innocence I envied. When I'd make subtle jokes about Margaret's opinions, Emily would defend her with a soft smile. "Mom, Grandma just wants to help," she'd say. "She's just old-fashioned." I'd nod, not wanting to ruin that image for her. Because deep down, I wanted Emily to have what I didn't, a sense of family unity, even if it was fragile. It was about 6 months before Margaret passed away when I first noticed something odd. Emily had come home from one of her weekend visits looking serious. Quiet, in a way that wasn't like her. She avoided eye contact and spent the evening in her room. When I went to check on her, she was sitting at her desk, scribbling something in a notebook. I asked what she was writing, and she quickly closed it. "Just school stuff," she said. I didn't push it, but that night, I heard her on the phone, whispering. Not giggling like she usually did with friends. Whispering. And I caught one word that made me pause: promise. The next morning, she acted normal again, cheerful, chatty, hugging me before school. But then Margaret called. Her voice was softer than usual. She's such a special girl, she said. I'm so glad she understands me. It was an odd thing to say. What did she mean, understands her? When I mentioned it to Daniel, he brushed it off. You're reading too much into it, Claire. Mom's just sentimental lately. She's getting older. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was being kept from me. A few weeks later, I found an envelope in Emily's drawer. It was addressed to my dearest granddaughter. I didn't open it, though I wanted to. Instead, I waited until Emily came home. When I asked her about it, she hesitated, her eyes darting away. It's just something Grandma gave me, she said softly. She said not to show it until later. Until later. That word stayed with me like a thorn under my skin. Margaret's health began to decline soon after. She refused to move into assisted living, insisted she'd stay in her big, lonely house. Emily visited her often, while I stayed behind. I told myself it was fine, that Emily's presence made the old woman happy. But part of me felt replaced, pushed out of my own family's circle. And still, I didn't know the truth. Not until the will was read. When the lawyer cleared his throat and said the words, "I leave my entire estate to my granddaughter, Emily Thompson," my world shifted. The house, the land, the savings, everything. Daniel's face went pale. Mine burned with humiliation. Emily turned to me, wide-eyed. Mom. I didn't know, she whispered. I wanted to believe her. But then I remembered the phone calls, the envelope, the promises. Maybe she had known. Maybe they'd both known, Margaret and Emily, and I'd been the fool sitting outside the circle, waiting for a seat that was never meant for me. After the reading of the will, the air in that office felt too thick to breathe. The lawyer's voice kept droning on about property transfer, legal procedures, executor duties, but I couldn't hear any of it. All I could hear was my own heartbeat, loud and uneven. When we got to the car, Daniel slammed the door harder than usual. He didn't start the engine right away. Just sat there, staring straight ahead, gripping the steering wheel. I don't understand, he finally said. Why would she do that? She always said the house would stay in the family. She did keep it in the family, I said bitterly. Just not the part that includes us. He turned toward me, frustration flashing across his face. Claire, please. Not now. I looked out the window, blinking back tears. Emily sat quietly in the back seat, her hands folded in her lap. She looked like she wanted to disappear. When we got home, no one spoke for the rest of the evening. The silence felt like glass, fragile, ready to shatter with one wrong word. Later that night, I found Emily sitting at the kitchen table. A cup of untouched tea sat in front of her. Sweetheart, I said gently, did you know about any of this? Her eyes filled with tears. No, Mom. I swear I didn't. Grandma told me she wanted me to have something one day, but I thought she meant jewelry or, I don't know, something small. Did she ever tell you not to tell me things? I asked. Emily hesitated. Sometimes, she admitted. She said you wouldn't understand, that it was between her and me. My throat tightened. Between her and me. I nodded slowly, trying to keep my voice calm. Did she ever write you letters? Or give you anything? Emily looked down. Yes. The letter I told you about. And there's another envelope. She gave it to me the week before she died. She said to open it after the will. My pulse quickened. Do you have it? She nodded and went to her room. When she came back, she held a thick cream-colored envelope, sealed with an old-fashioned wax stamp. My hands trembled as I took it. Inside was a handwritten letter, neat, elegant cursive that was unmistakably Margaret's. My dearest Emily. If you're reading this, I am no longer with you. But I want you to know something important, something your mother may not understand right away. This house, this estate, this legacy, it is yours, my darling. I have watched you grow with grace, kindness, and a heart too good for the world. You remind me of the women who built this family generations ago, strong, poised, determined. I trust you to protect what our name stands for. You are the future of this family, and I know you will make choices that honor it. Don't let guilt or pressure change your heart. This was my decision alone. With love. Your grandma. Margaret. I sat there, rereading those words until they blurred. Our family. Our name. It felt like a knife wrapped in velvet. When I finally looked up, Emily was crying. Mom, I don't want it, she said. I don't care about the house or the money. I just want things to go back to normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. I forced a smile, wiped her tears, and told her it would be okay, but inside, I was unraveling. That night, Daniel and I argued for the first time in months. She manipulated her, I said. She used Emily to punish me. You don't know that, he snapped. Maybe she just wanted to skip the middleman. She always thought I was bad with money. I laughed bitterly. So she punished you too. That makes it better? He rubbed his temples, looking exhausted. Claire, please. Mom's gone. Can we not make this uglier than it already is? But I couldn't let it go. It wasn't about the money, it was about being deliberately excluded. About years of enduring her coldness, her backhanded comments, her constant judgment, and realizing it all led to this moment, where she made sure I was erased from her legacy. And maybe, in her own twisted way, that was her final victory. For the next few weeks, I avoided going near the estate. The lawyer said we'd have to handle formalities soon, that Emily's name was now legally attached to the property, but I couldn't bear to step foot in that house again. Emily, though, insisted on going. She left it to me, Mom. I want to see it. One last time. Daniel agreed to take her. They went on a Saturday morning. When they came back, Emily was quiet again, that same haunted quiet I'd noticed before. What happened? I asked. She hesitated. The house feels weird without her. But there was something else. Grandma left a box for you. For me? Emily nodded. It was in her study. The lawyer didn't mention it. She said it was to be delivered personally. She handed me a small wooden box, intricately carved, with my name on a brass plate. Claire. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside were a few old photographs, Margaret in her younger years, smiling beside a man I assumed was Daniel's father. There was also a folded piece of paper, brittle and yellowed at the edges. I unfolded it carefully. It was a letter, to me. Claire. If you are reading this, I have likely caused you pain. For that, I am sorry, though I doubt my words will mean much to you now. You must understand something I never could say out loud. I admired you. Truly. Your strength, your patience, your love for Daniel and Emily, they are qualities I never had. But I also feared you. You represented change, and change, for me, was loss. When I saw how Emily looked at you, how deeply she loved you, I knew she would be fine. You gave her what I couldn't give Daniel, a home built on kindness instead of control. I left the estate to her not to exclude you, but to protect her from the family patterns that destroyed me. I trust her to do better than we did. I hope, in time, you'll understand. Margaret. I sat in silence for a long time after that. The resentment, the anger, the jealousy, it all began to twist into something else. Confusion. Sadness. Maybe even a sliver of understanding. Margaret hadn't trusted me. But maybe, she had trusted what I created, my daughter. Maybe that was her way of saying thank you. When I looked up, Emily was standing in the doorway, watching me carefully. Mom, she whispered, what did she say? I handed her the letter. She read it quietly, tears falling onto the paper. Then she hugged me, tighter than she had in years. And for the first time since the will, I felt something uncoil in my chest. Not forgiveness yet, but maybe the start of it. The next few weeks felt like living in a fog. Daniel threw himself into work, pretending everything was normal. Emily went back to school but came home quieter, more thoughtful. I tried to keep the house running, but everything I did felt mechanical: meals, laundry, small talk. It was all just background noise to the ache in my chest. Still, something inside me shifted after that letter. It didn't erase the years of tension between me and Margaret, but it forced me to see her not as a villain, but as a woman who lived in fear. Fear of losing control. Fear of being forgotten. And in her strange, flawed way, she had tried to preserve what mattered to her most, her family's name, through Emily. But there was still something that didn't sit right with me. Margaret's decision had created an invisible wall between us and our daughter, not through Emily's doing, but through everyone else's perception. News travels fast in families. Within days, Daniel's relatives began calling, some under the pretense of offering condolences, others out of thinly veiled curiosity. So Emily inherited the whole estate? Daniel's aunt asked over the phone, her tone sugary but sharp. Goodness, that's quite unusual, isn't it? I could practically hear the gossip gears turning. Soon, whispers started circulating, that I had manipulated Margaret, that Daniel had fallen out of favor, that maybe Emily wasn't even his biological child. That last rumor hit like a punch to the gut. When Daniel told me he'd overheard a relative say it at work, I felt physically sick. "They're saying what?" I asked, my voice trembling. He looked ashamed. "It's nonsense, Claire. Don't even listen to it." But how could I not? It was one thing to feel excluded. It was another to be painted as some scheming outsider in my own family. And all because Margaret's final choice had left more questions than answers. It all came to a head one Sunday afternoon at the family gathering we hadn't even wanted to attend. Daniel's cousin had organized a memorial lunch at the estate, Emily's estate now. I didn't want to go, but Emily insisted. "Grandma would have wanted us all together," she said, trying to be the peacekeeper she always was. When we arrived, the house looked just as I remembered it, the white columns gleaming in the afternoon light, the garden still perfectly trimmed. But the warmth that used to linger, even faintly, was gone. It felt like walking into a museum of memories. Inside, the conversations were polite but cold. I could feel eyes on us, on me. And then, over the soft hum of voices, I heard someone whisper, "Well, you know how these things go." Maybe Margaret wanted to keep the estate in the bloodline. Something inside me snapped. I turned around to see Daniel's aunt, the same one who'd been fishing for details over the phone. "Excuse me?" I said quietly. She blinked innocently. "Oh, dear, I didn't mean anything by it. Just that Margaret was very particular about family." The room went silent. Everyone froze, waiting. "For your information," I said, my voice steady but firm, "Margaret made her decision because she loved Emily. And because she trusted her. There's nothing sinister about that." The woman smiled thinly. "Of course, dear. No one said otherwise." But I could see it in her eyes, that smug doubt, that poisonous curiosity. Before I could say more, Daniel stepped in. "Enough," he said, his tone sharper than I'd ever heard it. "Mom made her choice. End of story. Anyone who wants to gossip about my wife or my daughter can find the door." The silence that followed was heavy. Then, slowly, people began looking away, murmuring about dessert, pretending nothing had happened. But the damage was done. That night, when we got home, Daniel sat me down. His voice was softer now, tired. "I'm sorry I didn't defend you sooner," he said. "I thought staying quiet was the best way to keep the peace. But I was wrong." I looked at him, this man who had spent his life trying to avoid confrontation, and I saw genuine remorse. For the first time, I felt like he understood what I'd been carrying all these years. "It's not just about me," I said quietly. "It's about Emily. She shouldn't have to grow up under this shadow." He nodded. "Then maybe we should take control of it." "Control of what?" "The narrative," he said simply. "The will might have shocked everyone, but it doesn't have to define us. We'll make it clear that this family isn't divided, not anymore." And for once, I agreed with him. Healing begins. We started spending more time at the estate, not because we cared about the inheritance, but because we wanted to reclaim it from the ghosts that haunted it. Emily insisted on renovating her grandmother's study into a small reading room. "I want this place to feel alive again," she said one afternoon, wiping dust off the old piano. As she worked, I noticed how confident she'd become, how she carried both her father's calm and my determination. Maybe Margaret had seen that long before I did. One day, as we were sorting through boxes in the attic, Emily found another envelope, this one unmarked, tucked inside an old photo album. It was a photograph of Margaret holding a baby, Daniel, only a few months old. On the back, in faded ink, she had written, "May he always find love stronger than mine." I don't know why, but those words made me cry. Because, in the end, maybe that's all she ever wanted, for her son, her family, her legacy, to experience a kind of love she herself could never give freely. As weeks turned into months, things began to soften between all of us. Emily started writing college essays about her grandmother, not as a saint, but as a woman who shaped her understanding of family and forgiveness. Daniel became more present, more grounded. And I finally let go of the resentment. I visited Margaret's grave one morning, bringing the same flowers she used to keep by her kitchen window, white lilies. "I understand now," I whispered. "You weren't trying to hurt me. You were trying to leave a piece of yourself behind. And maybe, that piece is Emily." The wind rustled through the trees, and for the first time in a long while, I felt peace. That night, I told Emily something I hadn't said before. "You know," I said, brushing a strand of hair from her face, "Grandma was right about one thing. You are strong, stronger than both of us." She smiled softly. "Because of you, Mom." And I realized then, maybe Margaret hadn't left me out after all. Maybe she'd just found a different way to include me, through the legacy of the daughter we both loved. The seasons began to change, and with them, so did we. Spring turned the old estate garden into a sea of white and pink blossoms. I started coming by more often, at first to help Emily sort through her grandmother's papers, but soon because the place no longer felt heavy. It felt alive. Emily planted roses by the gate, the same kind Margaret once adored. She told me she wanted to make the house a symbol of new beginnings. And slowly, it became just that. Neighbors began to stop by again, people who'd once avoided the family drama. Emily greeted them warmly, offering them lemonade on the porch, and I watched her with quiet pride. She had inherited her grandmother's poise, yes, but her heart, that came from me. Daniel started helping out too, fixing up the old barn and mowing the lawns. There was something healing in those simple acts, something grounding about reclaiming the place that had caused so much division. And as we worked, laughter returned, tentative at first, then natural. One afternoon, while sorting through boxes in the study, I found Margaret's jewelry case. Inside was a folded note. "For Claire. There's a necklace inside, one I wore the day Daniel was born. I kept it not for its worth, but for what it represented, the start of my motherhood. I want you to have it now. Because in all the ways that mattered, you became the mother I never learned how to be." I sat there, the delicate gold chain glinting softly in my palm, and cried, not out of sorrow, but release. For the first time, I didn't see Margaret as the woman who excluded me from her will. I saw her as a mother who had spent her whole life trying, failing, and trying again, in her own flawed way, to love. And maybe, by leaving everything to Emily, she was trusting me one last time, trusting that I would raise her heir with more grace than she ever had. Months passed, and Emily turned 17. We held a small gathering at the estate, just close friends and family. No pretenses, no whispers, no walls. She stood on the porch that evening, the fading sunlight painting her face gold, and gave a small toast. To my grandmother, she said, who taught me about strength. To my parents, who taught me about love. And to every woman who's ever tried to make peace between the two. There was a quiet murmur of applause, but I couldn't clap. I was too busy holding back tears. Later, as we cleared the dishes, Daniel squeezed my hand. You did good, Claire, he said softly. You kept us together. I smiled, looking out the window where Emily laughed with her friends near the garden. No, I said. We did. Even Margaret, in her own way. He nodded, and for the first time in years, I saw peace in his eyes too. A few days later, I went back to Margaret's grave one last time. I brought a single white rose, from the garden Emily had planted. Your granddaughter's doing beautifully, I said, my voice steady. You'd be proud of her. And maybe, just maybe, of me too. I stood there in the quiet, feeling the soft breeze brush against my cheek, like a silent acknowledgement. I realized something then: love doesn't always arrive the way we want it to. Sometimes it comes through harsh lessons, or stubborn silence, or even a last will that forces you to confront everything you tried to ignore. Margaret's love had been hidden, buried under layers of pride and control, but it was real. And in the end, it found its way to where it was meant to go. Through Emily. Through me. As I look back now, I see how the threads of our lives were always tangled: mother and daughter, wife and mother-in-law, love and resentment. But maybe that's what family really is, a tangle we keep learning to untie. I didn't inherit the estate, or the fortune, or the family name. But I inherited something far more valuable: the chance to break a cycle of bitterness and turn it into grace. If Margaret could see us now, she'd probably smirk that little smirk of hers, pretending not to care, but I think, deep down, she'd be at peace too. Because her legacy didn't end with the house. It continued in the laughter echoing through its halls, in the bond between a mother and daughter who finally understood that love, even when imperfect, can still heal what once was broken. If you were in my place, discovering that your mother-in-law had secretly left everything to your daughter, would you have felt betrayed, or blessed? Tell me in the comments. And if my story touched your heart, make sure to check my channel. The full video is already there.